Hello and welcome, early birds. It's a few minutes before the top of the hour, which we'll be starting our second day lecture with an assignment today. So as you get into the classroom, please let me know that you're on board and here. Tech Guy posted instructions at the top of the home page of our Facebook group so that I can see who you are if you wanted to let me know. Okay. I have a Facebook user who says they're excited. I'm sorry, I can't see your name, so I can't respond to you directly. Randy, lovely to have you here. Ariana, always good to see you. Anna's on board. Robert is saying that he's ready for another great webinar. Darlene Brock is here. Excellent. So we'll be starting in just a few moments. But to let you know, I try to keep the lecture to about less than 30 minutes. Then we have homework assignments to review, a couple of them so people can see them. That will come after that. And sometimes I just open it up for questions so people, if they have questions or concerns, can post it. So you can get done in 30 minutes. So Rita is here. Good to see you. Anybody notice that after yesterday that you started watching people differently? Tech Guy and I found a new to us show from BBC called, I don't know what it's called, 24 Hours, something to do with the 48 hours, the 48 hours between someone's arrest and whether they're charged or not charged. And it was actually a lovely show. It wasn't that tension that we usually see in American type of, oh my God, something's bad going to happen. It was very personable, etc. But the body language was outstanding as you watched the detectives talking to the suspect. So Amy's on board here. I think that's Amy. Mandy notifies people in the grocery store and the doctor office a lot closer. Yes, we have communication going on around us all the time. We just don't necessarily think about it. Kate, sorry that you missed the yesterday's, but there is a replay every day. It's up in the media file, top of the home page. There's a tab that says media. You click there and then you click video and you can find that. So let's go ahead and get started here. Today, I don't know why this comes second, but we're going to start talking about most overused body descriptions. Because it's important to know where we are as writers in order to see how we can change and improve. Randy already wrote a page and included body language in it today. So he's ahead of the game here. Cliche. This is a phrase or an opinion that is overused and betrays a lack of original thought. And we are all guilty of it at some point. As readers, though, we tend to notice when a writer defaults to a cliche passage, a phrase, a comment, a word use. And this is what we're wanting to try and avoid. Cliches. His brow arched. She smiled. He frowned. He shrugged. Her hands clenched. Except for the last one there, the rest of those are basically neutral. What does the shrug mean? What does the frown mean? It's just kind of, you leave it to the reader to figure out the emotion behind these actions. So why do we limit ourselves to cliches? Well, there's good reasons. It's easy. It's automatic. We just say the same thing the same way and assume it's good enough. It can take time and practice to actually use fresh, nonverbal communication. And Lord knows writing is hard enough without adding additional time to it or feeling awkward. And this one I like. Everybody else uses cliches, so it must not matter. So these are the most common justifications for why we fall into a habit of cliches, particularly with body language. So I'm going to pull them apart and having you start to think about your alternatives. So it's easy. That's the justification. So what's the alternative? As we write, we're juggling all sorts of details. So showing body language isn't always a top priority. But that's what the revision process is for. You don't have to include body language in your first drafts. Get the words on the page, then come back, all right? No one's going to fault you for that. What about alternatives to the justification? It's automatic. If we default to cliches or don't challenge ourselves to learn how to write fresh or strong body language, then we'll continue to automatically fall into already programmed habits. Now, Randy says, knowing when to use body language. The good news is you use body language anytime you want to show the degree of emotion, what is behind that communication. In yesterday's, we talked about that's what body language is about. It's communicating. So just like John mentioned here, that body language version of she said, he said, that's the most invisible thing you can possibly put in dialogue. Now, if it's all you put, what happens is you get the talking head syndrome. Knowing where to use them is any place that you're trying to communicate something to enhance the dialogue that's going on or conflict with the dialogue, including the internal dialogue that's going on. That's where body language belongs. So falling into it's an automatic justification is that it's nearly impossible to grow as a writer if we settle for old habits and patterns. Ariana says, I think I use too much body language. I've caught it in my revisions. And that's what revisions are for. If you put too much salt when you're cooking, you eat it and realize, I'm not going to do it that way again. So the more times that you realize I tend to overuse body language or underuse, gives you a good starting point to know where you're going next. What about the justification of it can take time and practice to use particularly fresh body language? That's what we call any kind of nonverbal communication that is not a cliche. Well, if you want to be a strong writer, an investment in writing nonverbal communication, aka body language, can show deeper emotions, stronger characterization, and allow your reader to experience your story in a more powerful way. Then taking the time and practice to use fresh body language can pay off in so many ways. And how about this last one? what are alternatives to, but everybody else uses cliches, so it must not matter. Now, what happens oftentimes is you're looking or reading a book that was written some time ago, when particularly when the reader wants something that's very gentle and not much emotion and just watching the characters on the page. And it was published pre-1980 or earlier. Now, the reason that can happen is because until computers, until streaming services, until we have cell phones, so many ways to be entertained. That's what reading is about, is entertainment. So if we can binge watch and use it on our phones, see it on our computers, we as writers have to give the reader a reason to read. Here in the United States, they've actually done studies where the most common time to read is at bedtime. Someone waits until they get in the bed to start reading. And what that means is that they're very much aware that they've got to put the book down because they have to get up for work the next morning. And so the average amount of time is between 1 or possibly 2 hours to read a book when you're tired. So if you want to engage the reader when they're tired and have a good reason to put a book down, you don't just give up and say, well, cliches are good enough. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is to know what you want out of your writing career. Not what I want you to do, not what another classmate wants you to do, what you want out of your career. And if you want to remain at an entry-level author where you need to write more and more average books that sell only a few dozen copies or less, and that's all you want, then by all means, keep doing what everyone else is doing, which is the cliches. Let's look at an example here. Here's a rough draft. Hugo was very angry. Pretty much a cliche. We are being straight telling. We don't feel Hugo's anger. It's passive, which means you're basically telling the reader, sit back and wait. I'll get to more details in a bit, maybe. We have no idea why the point of view character is thinking this. So it becomes a very passive experience. So let's see about a second draft. Hugo's eyes showed how angry he was. Well, we're getting some body language in here, but do you feel what is meant by angry? You know, you can look around and find anger all the time. Someone's angry because they got a sliver in their finger. Someone else is angry because they got a bill that was 3 times what they were expecting and they don't have the money in the bank. Those are different degrees of emotion. And that's the part that a lot of writers forget. It's not just to reveal emotion, but the degree of the emotion. So in this rough draft too, eyes are mentioned, but they're not communicating the emotion. So as a reader, you're not feeling it, even though the writer is telling you that they were angry. So let's look how Nuala O'Fallon wrote a passage using the eyes. Hugo was bloodless around the eyes with rage. Now, can you feel the emotion? Do you have an idea where Hugo is coming from? Maybe not why, but you're seeing it more. In this example, we're getting show plus tell. Now, this is one of those fallacies. We're always told just show, don't tell, but we're never told that we can show plus tell. That leaves no doubt as to the emotion and the degree of the emotion. Saskia says reaction shots I find are almost always unnecessary in my writing. I guess I feel I should use them because of TV, but are nodding and shrugging really required? It all depends what you're writing. If you are showing to people that are allies or friends, and person A asks something of person B, and person B's response is a shrug, that shows you that there's a disconnect between the friendship in some way. If that shrug is saying, I don't care, but that shrug could say, I have no clue how to fix it. So without that shrug, you're left to basically use dialogue, and that's all. Bob, can you do that for me? I don't think I can. I don't know how to do it. Then what do you see? There's a difference. That shrug can help, but no, you're not going to use it if it's not going to help. There's simple tweaks that you can use to power up your story by adding nonverbal communication. So Saskia, what you're calling reaction shots sounds like you're coming from a visual background, as in what you're watching on TV. On the page, we don't have the music that TV and movies use to reveal the emotion or the degree of the emotion. In TV and movies, we also are watching the body language. And if you've ever watched poor actors where they feel like they're stomping across a stage instead of acting in a scene within a movie, then you're not going to, all of that is doing the work that on the page, we have to find a way to make sure that the reader understands what's going on. Randy's saying Henry's eyes lit up and he smiles when she walked into the room. That is giving both motivation and what the point of view character is seeing about Henry. So now we understand better that what his smile meant. If Randy had just written, Henry smiled when she walked into the room, that gives us a different kind of visual. But with his eyes lighting up, and we all know what that means, that it is basically the eyes are opening wider. And we do that when we want to see something better or more of it. Watch somebody looking at someone on a diet with a counter full of pastries, and you'll see eyes light up. And it's because the eyes get bigger. That explains what the smile is. And then she walked into the room is what motivated the look. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our assignment. Looks like I'm going to be finished early today. So feel free to ask any questions at any time, because if you have the question, somebody else has the question too. Now I'm going to look at the exercise. Before I go into the exercise, I want to explain. I put the exercise up. Either Tech Guy does it while I'm teaching this 30 minutes or immediately afterwards. And I do that intentionally because if I've done this before, I've put it up first thing in the morning or midnight the night before, but without an explanation of why. What happens is I spend an inordinate amount of time with folks posting without understanding why they're doing this particular assignment. So in this specific assignment, I want you to look at work in progress or a manuscript that you have. And if you don't, make sure that you pay attention to other people's postings, because you will find why it's important to do this search. Tech Guy says that this exercise is already uploaded into the files. He just did it. Okay, so what you're doing is you've got your manuscript. And I want you to do a search in your specific manuscript. Search for words such as smile, eyes, mouth, shrug, nod, lips, brow, any body part that you think you may overuse. And I want you to compile a list of the top 3 that you notice. Now, be aware that when you look for something like eyes, you're going to catch things like, just do a word search, and it will tell you how many words you have in your document. You are going to be looking at, some of those are going to be, her eyes were blue. That's not body language, but they fall under that. So keep that in mind. Sometimes a mouth describes the mouth, the shape of the mouth, not necessarily what the mouth is, or the shape of the mouth is communicating. So compile a list of the top 3 body parts and how many times you use that description. So I want you to, as Evelyn says, icy blue eyes is not body language. It is simply describing the eyes. But I want you to do one step further. I want you to take the top 3, but also include the word count of your manuscript. So here's an example. Somebody had 95 smiles in an 80,000 word document. Now, I've seen 95 smiles in a 5,000 word document. So that's why the word count matters, so that we can look at that specifically. And the intention behind this is to find your default method of using body language and how often you tend to use it. It can be pretty eye-opening. And yes, that is body language. When you realize you think you have mostly the brow going up and going down and going across and wherever the brow goes. But then you find out, no, you don't. It might be a smile. Many of you will find that you are using the head. Now, in real life, that's common. We're looking at each other's faces, more common than we are not. But that's forgetting that there's a whole rest of the body to explore. Ariana says, will we talk about writing body language in first person versus third? I write in first, and we are not always aware of our own body language. So point of view character can't say their own eyes lit up. It would be internal sensations. Absolutely. We don't go into a lot of details about that, Ariana, simply because this is an overview. We go into that more in a month-long class, but we don't go in it in this course, the 5 days that we have here. And I apologize for that, but there's only so much time and only so much information that we can cover. But basically, you're absolutely right. When you are working in first person, you are being able to analyze another person's body language, but you may get it wrong. So that's intentionally. So someone thinks character A is the point of view character. They're looking at character B. They think character B is angry because they're reading their body language. And yet character B is not angry at all. Then that's why we can find out later why that character, what they were actually thinking or feeling versus what the point of view character thought they were thinking or feeling. And if your point of view character is not very aware of body language, that could actually play into it also. So writing in first person point of view, you can get deep into the character's point of view that you're writing about and feeling, but you also have to be very, very aware. Is this something character A is experiencing, and how do I show that? And making sure that I'm not describing it as I'm looking at it. So that's the biggest challenge when you're working with the differences between those two characters. John says, can you recommend some romance authors or books that do an especially good job of using body language in writing? John, I do have a list. I will see if I can dig it up, and it's predominantly romance, but there's a number of mysteries and other things in there too. So I will post that. Actually, I'll have Tech Guy post that up into the file section so that you can look at that. So I'm thinking, okay. Robert said, I have encountered this in teaching. Students I thought were bored later told me mine was their favorite class. Right, because oftentimes the thinking body language can be very pulled in, and a frown or a furrow between the eyebrows or a tension in the jaw, all of that is a way someone is processing and taking that information. It is also why doing an online course where you can't see the other people's face can make it very problematic, because you don't know, is the information you're giving being received the way that you think it is, or are they, when you are watching somebody on a Zoom and it's muted and somebody's frowning or their lips are flatlining and it looks like they're angry about something, but what we're not hearing is what's going on in their home environment in the background or their work environment. So it's a fun thing that can be used, that can intentionally. So wait a second. Connie says, first person can be aware they need to hold back with their body language, yes, so they don't reveal their feelings, and you can describe that effort in their point of view. That's a very good, when they're supposed to, because we can also, in first person point of view, get their internal dialogue. So if their internal dialogue is, I hate this person, so they have to force a very tight smile on their face in order to clarify. Saskia asked, would scent be a body language? And she means, and clarified here, body odor. Let's put it this way. It's not necessarily nonverbal communication, but we do tend to make judgments based on it. For example, I remember meeting a lovely lady from England who married as a war bride at the end of World War II. And I said, why did you marry the American? She came and moved over here at that point. And she said, he used deodorant. She said she hadn't met any of the men around her who used deodorant, but she loved that. And I thought, okay, that could also explain the divorce, but that is, you know, or somebody wears too much of a scent, we can make a judgment call. Somebody wears a scent that your character associates with another character. See, those are judgments versus what's being communicated by the person using the body, the scent. between men and women, it can make a difference because as women, go into heat basically in their cycle, they will smell differently and they smell others differently. So that does have an impact in the male and female dynamic. Let's see, we have someone here who is, I hope that helped a little bit, Saskia. Kate says, as a dental hygienist, it's imperative to learn body language because not all patients will tell you how they're really feeling. Absolutely. If you get somebody who has been raised to not show pain or not let others see their emotions, and you're going to get a mixed signal from them. All right, let's see what we have here. That goes back. Let me go back to Anna's because I didn't respond to her way back here. I know Anna posted. Okay, Anna. So I'm clear. We're to use the list you cited. Oh, it doesn't have to be limited to that list. If you find that you use something like their shoulders a lot, you can choose that word instead. I just gave you some examples on the homework that you could look at. So no, you are not limited to smile, eyes, mouth, shrug, nod, lips. The next line basically says, or any body part that you think you overuse. So I hope that helps. All right. And then, so I've got someone here, Claudia. So we should identify how many times we use each word without the show and tell. I'm not going to go into that much detail. That could help you more. But I just want you to say, how many smiles do you have in your manuscript? And you may use some with show and tell, but what it's going to inform you is, are you using enough for the word count? Are you using too much for the word count? And then you may want to do exactly what you indicate here to identify how many times you use it with show and tell versus just having someone smile. Again, so I'm clear. I'm searching to see how many times the body parts listed in the images you showed us yesterday. It can be, again, those, but I didn't go into all the details on those graphics. It's just a reminder to see which verbs like shrug, nod, we think we overuse. They can also be nouns. So you're not looking for the part of speech, you're looking for the body part. And then you can use it any way you want. John says, so much of this was affected by COVID. People interacted with each other differently in so many ways. Just the fact that if you lived in an area that was very, very good about using masks, all of a sudden, half of a face was cut off from communication. Tech guy thought that was wonderful because he had to get some ID taken and they left him with that on. So he looks like a pirate or a masked bandit. So he thought it was wonderful. But yes, it made it very difficult, particularly for people that rely on the face. Oh, thank you. Ziona's here. Would like suggestions for nonverbal communication for a mute character. Okay. They're not going to be that radically different than someone who is not mute. One, they're going to be watching other faces, but they may be using less expression in their own face. So don't think that you have to really expand on their mute, and thus, or it's about the emotions that person is feeling. So look at that. They may, because of other reasons with your character and the character that you've discussed in other classes, they may keep a very stoic face, but they're going to show tension and being uncomfortable or being happy in other areas of the body. So go with that, but don't worry about that you can talk to, interact online with others who are mute and ask them specifically, and you may get more feedback. All right, someone is saying, Mandy, I don't have a work in progress to use for reference. Okay, Mandy, not a problem. In that case, what I recommend is that you look very closely at what other people are posting and my feedback to them, because you're going to see a lot where it's too much, not enough, et cetera, et cetera. So then when you get something written, you'll know, oh, I remember what Mary said. And get into, but there's lots of examples that are going to be here available for you, and seeing the feedback that says too much, too little. What else do you have? Okay, Leslie is posting 67 smiles and 88,000 words. Was that your top 3? Leslie, I want all top 3, because what I want to see here is you've got 67 smiles, but you might only have 8 eyes or something like that. So it's not just one, it is a combination. Okay. Carol says, this may sound funny, but if I remove my glasses, I have difficulty hearing what people say because I rely on being able to see their face. Well, that's because you're reading the body language. You're reading the emotion in their face. So when you take off, you feel that you can't understand them as well. It's like if you were suddenly put into a group of people that spoke a different language. You're used to watching their faces, and now you can't see the faces as well. So you are basically it means that you personally do a lot of nonverbal communication. You're reading it from other people. With your eyes out, you can't read it. And that makes you feel like you can't hear them when you can hear them the same way you always could. But it's because you're hearing one thing, but you're not seeing, is that the true emotion they're feeling? Is that a different emotion that they're feeling? That's why you're going to have experienced that. Cheryl gave an idea, Ziana, for you. A mute character might use more or more exaggerated expressions in an effort to communicate. Good point there. And Darlene is saying that she has the same issue with understanding verbal without my eyes as well, because it is like your eyes are telling you more than what you're hearing. So that means now, knowing that, you can, on the page, make sure that if you don't and are not using nonverbal communication very much, you're denying the reader from that experience too. Okay, Mandy says, will follow, may try to write something to see. Absolutely. Anna says, you want only something like smile, not smiled. No, you can have both. I'm not going to get that specific, because if they smile or they smiled or they smile, they're basically using the same body language tool of the lips. So include both. Darlene says, so we all need to add is numbers on a post. Do you want us to take a poorly written one and make it showing? Nope, not at this point. Because what you're going to do here is literally just like in this example, you have 95 smiles and 80,000 words. Yeah. And then you put how many frowns, if that's your favorite thing, or how many shrugs, if that's your next favorite thing. That lets me see overall where are your default usage of body language. That's all. And not yet taking something to rewrite yet. Okay, I'm trying to feel. Leslie writes Regency. So there's a lot of brow lifting with a peer. Absolutely, because that becomes almost something that they're trained. That's how they're communicating to those lesser than themselves, or as they see it, they grow up seeing that body language used by the males around them or the females, and thus they use that too. Okay, again, whoever, I can't see who's posting. Claudia, 50,000 words. I have 128 eyes, 133 smiles, and 108 kiss. 55,000? That's a boatload of kisses going on in that document. I hope there's a lot of people that are kissing there because, but if you, Claudia, use that hashtag EX1, post in the Facebook group, then I can give you feedback on it there. But right off the bat, that you have that basically that kiss is there's a lot of kiss going on in comparison to the eyes and the smiles. So that's very fascinating. Someone is saying here, Leslie, I work at a level 1 trauma center, so masks for far longer than most places. Absolutely. People cannot see when you smile, but they also cannot see when you stick out your tongue at them. Yes, there are benefits to those masks at some time. But yes, you have to use your voice, your tone. Remember, 30-some% is your tone of voice. So you have to show that in your tone of voice when they cannot see your smile. But a true smile crinkles the side of your eyes. So most people can see that. Connie says, grins are overused. Tessa likes smirks. And Claudia says, I like the kisses. And again, if it makes perfect sense in your story, Claudia, it's just that as you'll start seeing, as people post their homework on the Facebook, you'll start seeing that to have that many kisses, you know, it might be if you have a character that's running a doggy daycare or something like that, or is a child minder. They may have a lot of kisses. They have nothing to do with the kisses between a couple. But you also want to be aware, as you see other people's posting, you are not going to see that many kisses. It stands out. But you know what? It is your work and you get to do it any way you want. Connie says, seeing others overuse will make us more aware of our own. Absolutely. So be sure and include that hashtag. I think Christy did it. earlier today, which is a hashtag, capital B, capital L, capital Q. No spaces, no periods. When you post a question, because I'm looking for those first to make sure that no one's waiting on that. Tessa says, make sure you're not counting sun-kissed cheeks. There probably are some, but even if you use sun-kissed, that's still a lot of kisses. So what you will do then is go back and do a search and start identifying how many ways are you using those kisses, and do you really want that many? So other questions here, we're a little bit over in our time, but that's what I'm here for. So if you have any other questions about the homework, the intention is to find out where your default, what you use most often and most commonly, even if you use it in different situations in a story. Yvette says she knows that smiles is her go-to for sure. A lot of people will be in that same boat. So have fun with this. It's like I said, it can be pretty eye-opening, and particularly when you're starting to look at other people's postings too. You'll start to notice that people are, in that Claudia's 55,000, another person may have much fewer uses of descriptions. So hope this helps you. I appreciate your coming to this live event, and post your homework with that hashtag EX1, so that what happens then is it goes into a file that I can see all of them at the same time, and then I'm not trying to get through everybody's. Do not post the homework on this thread from the class. Do not post the homework on somebody else's thread, because that will hide it from me. And I want to get as many responses as I can between this afternoon, evening, and tomorrow before we get into the next lecture. So thank you for being here. I appreciate your patience, and have fun with the process.